Hi, so we're starting with the listen along series of Econ, Unit 1, AS level, Chapter 1, Scarcity, Choice and Opportunity Cost. So in this chapter, we have 4 subtopics, and each of them are pretty small, so we can go through this quickly. Starting off with the fundamental economic problem. So, what is it? The fundamental economic problem is that there's a scarcity of resources. Now, let's break that down. Scarcity, as in, there's not enough. What are resources here clearly? Resources are basically the inputs used to produce goods and services. What do these inputs contain? They could either be land, labor, capital, enterprise. Capital is basically the money we spend in. And then enterprise is basically a structure of an entity, a firm that is working to provide you services, right? So the factors of production, these are the 4 factors of production. It could be any one of these inputs, right? Any one of these inputs. So since these resources are scarce, that is why that scarcity is called the fundamental economic problem. And also, there's another important thing we need to learn. That is the difference between needs and wants. Needs are basically things that are essential for survival, like food, shelter, and clothing. Whereas wants are the less essential, more like a car, like a luxury handbag, all these are less essential to survival. And since they have different purposes they're serving, individual, firms, and governments, these 3 different entities, they have to make choices based on what they want out of these needs and wants, and that's when goods and services are produced and consumed. Right? That's when a choice is made. That's why making a choice involves taking decisions on how to allocate these scarce resources between these many competing needs. So the fundamental economic problem is that there are scarce resources that we've learned just now, and also that wants are unlimited. Right? Wants are unlimited and resources are scarce. That means the choice always has to be made between what do we use. And then we have unlimited wants. So the basic understanding of this topic is that there are certain basic needs that everyone must be satisfied to stay alive. And as we just said, there are some luxuries like television, cars, and trips. But remember that what is a luxury for one individual may be considered an essential for others. That's because everyone has a scale of preference. And each individual's scale of preference is a product of a set of influences. Right? Because you will have your own set of scale of preferences based on what you like and what you don't like. And these vary between individuals widely, right? Some we can expand as we grow older, and some we may develop them while we see others enjoying certain things, so we also may want that certain thing. And all of this points to the fact that people will always have wants, right? So now society is still faced with the fundamental economic problem of limited resources and unlimited wants. Now the second topic. Given limited resources and unlimited wants, we have to choose between what to satisfy. And the true cost of any choice made between the alternative is called opportunity cost. So basically, what is an opportunity cost? Let's say we have $10, and in that $10, we can either buy a $10 chocolate, or we can buy 2 lollipops for $5 each, right? But you can't spend on both because you only have $10. That means you have limited resources. $10, you can either spend it on one chocolate, or you can spend it on 2 lollipops, right? This is $10 and this is $5 each. So if suppose you choose this one chocolate, these 2 lollipops become your opportunity cost. So opportunity cost basically tells you the real cost of your choices. It tells you what you're actually giving up. So if you choose this one chocolate, the opportunity cost is the 2 lollipops, which is what you're giving up. It's a recurring topic, so it's important to understand this clearly. And the last topic is basically, since we have this fundamental economic problem of scarce resources and unlimited wants, we have three questions we need to ask individuals, firms, and governments as to what they decide to do. These three important questions help us allocate the resources, right? First question is what to produce. Because since we can't produce everything, we have to decide what we produce and in what quantities, right? Either we can choose food, clothing, or vehicles, or military equipment to improve national defense. So these are the choices a government has to make between, oh, do the people need the food, clothing, or vehicles, or are we in a state of crisis where we have to spend more on military equipment? It depends on more or less of what the situation is and what the country wants. Next is how to produce. How to produce is basically it considers how they can get the maximum use of out of the resources available. Sometimes they have to consider it purely out of economic reasons, and sometimes it can also consider, okay, assuming how to produce, they want to get the maximum out of it, right? That means you want to spend the lowest. But that way you may have to spend on cheap labor. But there may be moral objections to the use of cheap labor. So in that sense, they're both like ways to think about it. And for last question, for whom to produce? Governments have to decide whether everyone is going to have a more or less equal share, or will they have a bit more inequality in the system? Although, while some economies try to create a more equal society through policies that like redistribute wealth and income using the method of taxation, there are economies, by contrast, that have extreme inequalities of income and wealth, often based upon inheritance, because they're inheriting certain things from their fathers and forefathers. You can't exactly make it equal, even though how much you try, right? And inequality and taxation are topics you're going to talk in much more depth in later chapters. But for now, these are the three questions: what to produce and in what quantities. This a firm, individual, and a government may decide, right? Based on choices they have. And how do we produce it? How do we produce it? By using the least amount of inputs and produce the maximum we can. And then, for whom to produce? Who are we exactly targeting and who are we exactly benefiting from this? That's the end of this chapter.